to Teachers Talk Radio. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
And welcome to the show. This is Beyond the Classroom, unlocking potential through extracurricular activities, so education outside the classroom, with me, Heath Robinson, and Mo Otsoy. So in the show today, we're going to be talking about why we take the education outside the classroom and do all of our careersy type stuff. So stay tuned for that.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Yeah, welcome to the show. As I said, this afternoon, you're with Heath Robinson and Mo Otsoy. Afternoon, Mo.
Afternoon, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. This afternoon we're going to talk about another show in our series. So we're looking at education outside of the classroom. The last couple of weeks we've had some guests that we've worked with over the last few years as our roles as teachers in a sixth form college. And today we're going to keep it just me and Mo. We're going to talk about the why. Why do we do it, and why do we make sure that our students are exposed to careers advice, to businesses, and have them coming in and what have you. So got a few things lined up, and I just want to start with the why, and some of it is around kind of the Gatsby benchmarks, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about Ofsted and the requirements of that, and then Mo, who's done quite a lot of work on developing contacts with businesses, is going to talk about his experience and what he does, and some tips on that, and some of the events that we've done over the past few years, just hopefully give you some ideas of how to tie in with that. So the first thing is around Ofsted, and I know the Ofsted inspection framework is changing, and we'll wait to see what that looks like exactly over the coming weeks and months, I assume. Essentially, this section of it isn't going to change too much. So in the current framework, it's all around personal development and the section on that. So it says about the inspectors making a judgment on that. It's about, we're ensuring that the curriculum extends beyond the academic, technical, vocational. It provides for learners broader development. It enables them to develop and discover their interests and talents. It also says about the curriculum, the providers' wider work support that supports learners to develop their character. So things like resilience, confidence, independence, and what we've seen over the last few years, particularly since COVID, is some of those skills are missing much more prevalently than they were beforehand, particularly around resilience and independence, and how developing your careers program can really bring on those skills in some students. It also says in the framework, the provider prepares learners for future success in their next steps. So it's all about giving information and providing the students with the information to make a choice in their education. They may well go and work in the local supermarket, but that's their decision. If they've got all the information, they can go and do that and make that decision. And the last part of it, in the personal development section of the framework, says the provider prepares learners for life in modern Britain, equipping them to be responsible, respectful, active citizens who contribute positively to society. So it's not just around careers and finding them their next steps. It's about building that character and having our students having an understanding of what the world around them feels and looks like. Mo, kind of bring you in at that point and talking about the framework there. So talk to me a little bit about kind of that last section that I said about there, about bringing students into modern life and understanding what's out there for them.
Yeah, it's something that I experienced myself when I was at school, having access to. I went to a school which didn't have any of this additional stuff, and when I hit the workplace, I found it was a bit of a shock because nothing I'd done in school, university, I hadn't had that experience, and really, I struggled for the first few years of my work life because it was just such a different culture that I wasn't used to, and it's something that actually through my role currently. I talk to a lot of businesses, and I asked them questions about, and we had Gerard last week from a recruiter's perspective say the same thing, that actually those students come into the workplace without those skills, the interpersonal skills, without any experience, and also sometimes without any sort of idea of where they want to take their career. And sometimes they take a job or take an apprenticeship or whatever it might be because they don't know what else to do. And actually, then that sets them up on a route of actually pathfinding once they start their career. And actually, if we can give those opportunities for them whilst they're in that stage, whilst they're at the as some call it, the manual stage of their sort of development, then when they get to these places, when they think, actually, I really would love to do this job, and you ask them why, and they can't really tell you why. Well, actually, they can test it before they get there, before they invest years and years and years into that one area, start the job and go, actually, this is not what I wanted, and I've just spent my last 2 years at college and then 3 years, 4 years at university to do a career that I actually don't want to do. So having that opportunity and experience at this stage, I mean, obviously we teach 16 to 19, but at any stage of their development can really give them that experience. And I guess it kind of links, Chris, to the other thing we've been looking at, which is the that government published document, the research that they've done around career guidance and what they've found on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of pick up on a couple of things that you were saying there. We're teaching in a town that has, it's a diverse town that has high levels of deprivation, absolutely. And actually, what we're seeing is students coming through that may not have a background of people working, so they haven't got that advice, they haven't got that information at hand at home. So it's up to us as educators to be able to provide that information and provide those options, or otherwise they may not know that those options are out there for them. And it's about developing and building that aspiration to actually go out and do something that you enjoy doing and that you want to do in future life. And I think that's really important when they don't have that necessarily in their home life, as quite a lot of towns and cities all across the country. There will be students that you will see day in and day out that don't have that aspiration. And I think the other thing we were looking at is the Gatsby benchmarks and achieving those. So that kind of ties in with that they set out exactly what we should be doing. So there's 8 Gatsby's benchmarks. So there's to provide a stable careers program, learning from career and labour market information, giving the students all the information that they need around the labour market, addressing the needs of each young person, linking curriculum learning to careers, encounters with employers and employees, experiences of workplaces, encounters with further and higher education, and personal guidance as well. And it's really important that we're achieving those 8 benchmarks there. So something that we'll talk about later on in the show is some of the ideas that we've had around achieving these benchmarks, achieving the kind of personal development guidelines that the Ofsted framework has set out for the last few years. But one thing that we notice, and why this came about, is some of the students are lacking independence and resilience and aspiration. But what we did in the past, and I'm sure you'll reflect on this in schools and what have you across the country, is we were getting businesses to come in and talk to students, talk to classes of students. And what we were finding is they'd come and talk to that class, and it might be a class of 20, 25, 30 students, and about 3 or 4 of them are interested. They care about that business, they care about that. And the rest of them, don't care at all. They don't want to go into that area. So we'll talk to you later on in the show about kind of some of those ideas, how we turned it on its head a little bit and did that as well. So Mo will talk to you in a bit more detail about that later on in the show. Some of the other things that we want to talk about is kind of why extracurricular activities matter. So it's the kind of long-term impact of that and developing skills, and they take some time to develop. And I constantly say that we are a place of education, and that education isn't just a subject that we're trying to teach. It's those core skills. But what we're also noticing since COVID is the motivation of students is poor, and we're getting more and more students that are kind of unmotivated and disengaged with school. Is that something you're noticing in your lessons, Mo?
Yeah, it is, and it's something that I think every teacher listening probably has had that conversation of they're not motivated. And I think it's I've not been teaching for long, but the hardest thing I've found is to try and get some work out of students who have no motivation. And I've had conversations, like I came into a bit naive thinking, of course they want good A levels, so they wouldn't be here. But actually, I've had conversation with students, and I'm like, well, why are you not trying? And just like, don't know. I don't really have any sort of. I don't know what I'm going to do afterwards. I don't really know why I need these A levels almost, and having that. And I've definitely seen it in the couple of years that I've been doing it. And I kind of reflect on my time at school, and actually, people around me, most of the people around me at school did have that. I want to go to university at the time, and this is kind of a bit of a sad story, really. But at the time, it was all about university when I was in school, and this was back in 2010, which is when I left. And it was all about university. There was no career advice, there was no apprenticeships or anything like that, really. And we're now in a place where we live in a world that's not all about university. There are lots of other opportunities and options out there. And I think for a lot of our students, that lack of motivation or goal kind of limits their experience in colleges, but also their attainment levels. And it's a bit like, if you don't have a goal, you're not really going to be trying as hard as you probably need to when you have a goal in front of you. And actually, that's something I wanted to ask you, Chris, because obviously you've been teaching a lot longer than me. And how does it compare now than it did maybe when you first started or even before COVID? Is it really something that started after COVID, or does COVID kind of speed it up a little bit, that lack of motivation?
Yeah, I think it's always been there, absolutely. And I don't think in my time teaching, which is far too long, and I won't give away my age by talking about that, but it's something that has always been there, and I don't think we've ever got that advice correct. You say about your time you left in 2010 in school, and then it was all about university. When I was leaving school, it wasn't about university at all. I lived in a small seaside town in Essex, and there was no talk about university. There wasn't that aspiration. It's a small seaside town, and the jobs that you could do was go and work down the port, and that was the aspiration that was had, or lack of it. So I don't think we've ever got it right, but certainly have noticed since COVID that lack of motivation and lack of engagement in schools has definitely increased, and students not knowing what they want to do with their lives. And we get them at 16, but we work with secondary schools as well, and we go in and do quite a lot of work with them. And there isn't that development of their understanding of the market to give them that motivation. And ultimately, if we can give them that motivation, if we can give them something to aim for, and we can make sure that they're on the right course before they even come to college and sixth form and make their choices in year 8 or 9 or whatever the choices they have in secondary school, then they're going to be more motivated if they've got something to aim for and something to do. And only can they do that if they've got the information to hand. So yeah, absolutely, Mo, in answer to your question, I think it is more prevalent, but I do think it's always been something that's been lacking in UK education.
And I just wanted to add to that, Chris. Like, I was just thinking, some of the things that we hear students say, "I'd love to be a YouTuber. I'd love to be famous on TikTok and social media." And one of the things that got me thinking, because I thought, "Oh, come on, everyone can't be a YouTuber. Yeah, it's all glam and whatever." And they want to be YouTubers because they see what a career in YouTube is. They see what it can give people, and they can see what it's about. Yeah, and it's not all fun and games, but actually they do get information about how to be a YouTuber, and they see it, and that might contribute to them because they don't know the alternatives. So it kind of comes back to what we are saying about they don't really get much information about what's out there, and what they see from these influencers that we all know they watch a lot and they see a lot of. They go, actually, yeah, I'd like to do that. And I think if we gave them more opportunities, yes, some of the jobs out there aren't maybe as glamorous as being famous online and all of those things, but actually not everyone wants to do that. So giving them that exposure to these jobs and roles and careers, and I don't just mean that by let's just talk to them, get someone in and talk to them about what a career is. Actually, getting them some experience to do that, and we're going to talk about it a bit later on in the show. I think that just will give them another option. They might all still want to be YouTubers, and that's fine. But as long as we're giving them the options, I guess that's what our job is as educators: is give them that option, and then ultimately they'll make the decision as to where they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's giving them that information, isn't it? So they can make that valid choice. Okay, let's get some ads and we'll be back in just a moment.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads. No distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. eduflix.com.
Hi secondary school teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded program helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering maths circles across the UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order.
Okay, and welcome back. So before the adverts there, we were talking about why we do extracurricular outside of the classroom. So we're talking about the Ofsted framework, we're talking about Gatsby benchmarks, and some of the the more wordy, boringy stuff about why we do it essentially, but what we can achieve. And we know it's not all about Ofsted and doing that. It's about other things. So we were talking about there about developing character, resilience, confidence, and the benefit for us as teachers is it can improve motivation as well. So improve motivation in the classroom. We're not getting so many of those by not getting so many of those students that don't care, don't want to be there, and it's a bit like pulling teeth, trying to get them to learn. So that's what we're talking about before the break. Mo, just to kind of continue on that. So one of the things we're speaking about there is is around building character and things like that. And we were talking about getting across to students that don't necessarily have that home life where people go out to work or have that aspiration or what have you. What about the kind of barriers faced by disadvantaged students? What are you seeing in the classrooms according to that?
Yeah, so again, the context of where we are, we do see a lot of students that fall into that category, and when we talk about extracurriculum activities, sometimes those things involve some kind of fee. So it could be trips, whether that's locally within the country or even actually abroad. And actually, students from lower income households are significantly less likely, for obvious reasons, to participate in these activities. And I'm going to be again give a one from my story. So when I was younger, I came from a low income household, and for me sometimes it was difficult to get involved. So the I remember one time there was a trip to France, and I didn't even go home and ask my parents because I knew that wouldn't be something that we could get involved in. And I remember it to this day. And my friends went and they enjoyed it and they did all these things. And now that kind of plays in again as to why I want to do this, because and we talk about and we try different strategies. I'm sure we'll get into it a bit later on as to how we can support these particular students, because ultimately we can put on great trips abroad in the country, but if it's only those who are able to attend for financial reasons, that we're missing that key demographic that we always talk about in our lessons, which is those people who may need that additional support. Because those who can attend probably have parents or guardians or whoever is going to work and they've got money to be able to pay for it. And those who don't, they don't get that knowledge of what it's like to work, but also that finance that they need sometimes. And we know that finance isn't available from any other source apart from the parents, unfortunately, these days. So it can affect them, and actually that barrier exists. And what happens, and that has a knock-on effect, is, as we all probably know, those who listen probably has a student there they can probably think about who falls into this category, where because of that limited finance and that barrier, they have limited access to these events, and then they then aren't able to develop those skills and knowledge that they need, and that gap gets bigger and bigger between those who can access and from those socioeconomic backgrounds to those who can't. And really, we know from a lot of the advice that we get, and a lot of that, I remember, during my training year, there was so much on actually making sure that we take the whole class with us and not leave anyone behind, where actually some of these can lead to people being left behind. So we've got to be conscious of that and maybe come up with ways that we can include those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And saying earlier that where we teach, it's quite a diverse background. It's areas of deprivation, huge deprivation in the areas that we teach in the surrounding towns and villages and what have you in Suffolk. But that leads to other things. It leads to kind of disadvantage in terms of you can't afford transport, you can't afford appropriate clothing and stuff like that. So even to buy a suit or a pair of shoes is limits participation for some people, and also knocks confidence as well. If you're going to a job interview and you're next to someone in a nice shiny new suit that you've got a one from a charity shop or hand-me-down or something like that, it can knock the confidence of that student. And that's we can talk about again something else that we've done to get around some of those barriers to participation and avoid that. Mo, what's your role then? So talk to me about your role in the sixth form that you're working in kind of avoiding some of these things.
So I always get the name. I can't always say it in the right way. I'm the CEIAG. I think I've got it right this time. Coordinator in the college, and what that means is just a fancier way of saying I'm responsible to make sure within our department of, I don't know how many students we've got now, but quite a large number of students to put on these extracurricular events, but also help teachers within our department with some of those. The less fun admin parts, because we know that it's. I mean, this was something that you, Chris, you figured out and got me on to do that, which was that actually one of the barriers that we all, I'm sure, can relate with is the admin time and the work that's required to do something like this and get people get put on these events. So I initiate sometimes some of these extracurricular activities, but also if teachers have an idea, plan, they know they can come to me and go, "Can you do the boring stuff like the health and safety, the boring yet crucial things?" I don't want to get in trouble, but like the risk assessments and the admin that's involved, fill in visitor forms, all those kind of things. And since I've done that, we found that actually it has helped other teachers actually go, "Do you know what? Yeah, I didn't have time for this before, but actually, with the support of someone there, we can put these events on." And the whole idea of all of it is what we're talking about, which is give students that experience, give them more options, hopefully build their skills. So we do a lot of work around their confidence, public speaking, and so on, and just to give them that exposure and that opportunity, really, the opportunity to learn more and see the options and develop outside the classroom, because as we all know, in the classrooms it's become more and more difficult to work on those skills that students need to develop for the workplace, because the curriculums are so full, busy, and we get on, and this is inevitable, I think, in most cases, which we need to get them good grades, we've got content to get through, and all those other things get sort of put to one side, because we all have to get our jobs done in one way or another. So that's where I come in and work. And we're lucky that where we work within our department, there is someone like opportunity for someone like me. But actually, not everywhere has that, do they? So
No, absolutely not. And what we talk about later is actually just some things that we've done around saving time. So how can we put things in place, and we understand that the paperwork that's involved, the risk assessments, and that can put a lot of people off doing some of these things as well. So, Mo, looking at, you mentioned it earlier, with kind of this government report around interaction about developing careers and things like that. And one of the recommendations in there is about financial support for both colleges and for students. So I think that's kind of an interesting element of it. And so, so it says in there, there's kind of, where is it? Sorry. So around a national bursary fund to support extracurricular involvement. It recommends stronger data collection on participation rates by background. So at the moment, there's data around participation, but not necessarily broken down by where that student's come from, what their background is, and their socioeconomic background as well. One of the other recommendations it makes is it endorses partnerships with community organisations to wider access, especially, and it emphasised this, especially in rural or underserved areas. And I think that's a really important element in that rural or underserved areas. And we mentioned earlier that I grew up in a seaside town on the coast in Essex, very much really high levels of deprivation, some of the highest in the country. And you don't necessarily have those businesses, those large businesses who want to get involved, who want to get into schools, or that kind of aspiration, as we spoke about earlier, in these places. And where we're teaching at the moment is in Suffolk, and is in a fairly large town, but a catchment area is a lot of the villages outside. And for years, they've been underserved by kind of careers advice, and education as a whole has been quite poor in looking at stuff like this. So that's why it's kind of extra important that these schools outside of the big cities are doing as much as those that are inside the cities, I think.
Yeah, and just for those very quickly, Chris, the report is titled "Navigating Post-16 Careers Guidance, Supporting Learners from Lower Socioeconomic Backgrounds." It was published on the 2nd of April, and a lot of the stuff in there, to be honest, are things that I think we all see, and there's not a lot in there that's new, because we see it. So some of the things we talked about already, like how independent schools. So one of the things they've got on there is independent schools offer a wider range of extracurricular activities, and that links to higher aspirations for further education, etc. So there's a lot in there, and it's interesting, and we'll be interested to see where this goes. The proposed initiative that national extracurriculum bursary. They've proposed it, but we'll see if that happens. And I think that will help a lot of schools with this, which funding it does create a barrier. And as someone was talking in the office today, Chris, about how there used to be money around extracurriculum activities. I don't know. Before this was, I think, 2015, prior to 2015, and that's been taken away. So hopefully they will reintroduce that and give that support, and that will help those that we talked about on the lower incomes actually be able to attain and close that gap, hopefully, between, because what happens, and I won't bore anyone with this, and I know we need to go for the news, Chris, but I teach economics, and one of the things we teach is a poverty trap, which is when a child is born into poverty, they grow up in poverty, they end up in an unskilled job, stay in poverty, and then the cycle continues. And actually, something like this hopefully can help take some of those people out of poverty and move them into a more comfortable life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what that paper does, and that's come from the government, is one of the first major bits that they've said about education since taking power. And we're kind of waiting with bated breath about what changes they want to make. They've got the hold on the vocational changes and things like that at the moment. But what this report says to us is that actually there's going to be a big emphasis. So that's going to feed through to the new Ofsted framework. It's going to feed through to educational direction that this Labour government's going to take. So I think the more we can get prepared for it now and start putting things in, the more we can take advantage of it when these come in. So let's go to the news now. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the ideas that we've done and give some, hopefully, some inspiration about how we can integrate these Gatsby benchmarks and how we can get on top of these things and give the students the information that we need. So back after the news.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads. No distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. eduflix.com.
Hi secondary school teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded programme helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering math circles across the UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Sky News covers a story about behaviour at schools in Wales. It says that according to Estyn, the school's inspectorate for Wales, some parents are unsupportive of tackling poor behaviour. But the article goes on to say that the Welsh Government says it is committed to addressing the issue. The article reports that from the 24 secondary and all-age schools Estin visited during the last year, nearly all of them noted a degree of difficulty in engaging with some parents. The Welsh Government said it was looking to address declining behaviour in schools and colleges. In the Inspectorate's national survey, many staff described a few parents as unsupportive and sometimes undermining staff by excusing poor behaviour. The main issues identified by staff were low-level disruption, defiance and truancy, and poor behaviours outside of lessons, including vaping, use of mobile phones and damage to school property. When presented with concerns about the child's poor behaviour, a few parents displayed aggressive behaviour towards school leaders and staff, the report said. Most school leaders who responded to Estin's national survey said the overall support from the Welsh Government and other agencies in dealing with challenging behaviour was inadequate, and that schools were having to use limited budget to provide their own behavioural support. Estin has recommended an update to national behaviour guidance. The Welsh Government said it welcomed the report and that it would be discussing these points further at a behaviour summit due later in May. Standard reports that the Educational Institute of Scotland Union is to consult members on possible strike action over a dispute regarding class contact time. The union claims the Scottish Government has failed to deliver on its 2022 promise to address teachers' increasing workload, having stated it would reduce maximum class contact time in schools to 21 hours per week. The union claims neither the Scottish Government nor local authorities have made any proposals on tackling this issue. EIS has announced it will open a consultative ballot at its AGM next month. A new project to strengthen collaboration between universities and businesses and others to drive growth and create jobs in the northeast of England has received £8.9 million from Research England. The 5-year programme involves Durham, Newcastle, Northumbria, Sunderland and Teesside universities and is intended to grow the Northeast's capacity and capability to commercialise impactful university research. Professor Karen O'Brien, Vice-Chancellor and Warden of Durham University, said, "The project will be a game changer." Over the 5 years, the project will deliver in 7 areas, focused on addressing specific opportunities and barriers to expanding the commercialisation of university research across the region. Research England is investing a total of £30 million in 4 regional projects. Full details of the UK Government's announcement of the projects can be found on the .gov.uk website. Finally, the BBC reports that tens of thousands of GCSE students will get their grades in an app on their phones during this summer's results day. The government is trialling the Education Record app, with 95,000 students in Manchester and the West Midlands ahead of the national rollout. Ministers say they hope it will save money for college admissions teams, but school leaders say students and schools will need support to ensure the app works properly. Students involved in the pilot will still be able to go to school to get their paper results, the traditional way. In Scotland, pupils have been able to get results online since 2019. Education Minister Stephen Morgan said it was high time exam records were brought into the 21st century. Unions have also welcomed the trial, but noted it was crucial that government gets this absolutely right. More comment and reactions from school staff and pupils can be found on the BBC News website. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads. No distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. Eduflix.com.
Hi secondary school teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded programme helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering math circles across the UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order.
Okay, welcome back. You're with Chris Heath Robinson and Mo Otsoy. We're talking about education outside the classroom. Before the news, we were talking about the reasons why it's so important to have this kind of careers advice and links with businesses outside of the classroom as well. And we're talking about Ofsted framework. We're talking about the Gatsby benchmarks, and we're talking about a government report that came out not so long ago that was talking about recommendations for improvements in schools and education around careers. So next part of the show, we're going to talk about some of the things that we've done in the past that have proven to be really successful on this. And Mo, one of the things that we've been doing over the last few years is around business networking breakfasts. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so just a preface to the business breakfast. So we found that those we used to get guest speakers come in and businesses want to come and speak to students and give a talk about their industry and talk about it. And what we found, unless we force students to be in the classroom, not many turned up. And as a teacher or organizer, when you're speaking to businesses and getting them coming in, it's very embarrassing when they turn up and there's about 2 students there. So one of the things that we do that works really well, and this is something that Chris started where we are and I've sort of taken on, is we call it the business breakfast. And what it is a networking event where we invite industry, so people from all sectors. Now, the ones that we invite obviously are relevant to what our subjects, but for any subject really, if you invite those businesses that you work closely with or the ones that are in your area, so we invite them in, and actually you'd be surprised because the big companies have sort of talent acquisition managers or whatever they call them. Basically their role is to engage with schools, and they are there employed to do that. So we reach out, invite them to the event. We also invite students as well, and it's all sign up, so we don't just make it an open house for the students. We have limited space, so we have limited number of places. And our last one was in April, and we had about 25 businesses attend and 25 students, and we bring them all into a room, and we had a guest speaker at the start, and so we decided to give themes to these events. So we thought, actually, how can we attract businesses to come and give them something back? And we did a sort of a retaining talent type of talk at the start, where we invited experts in the field who did a talk at the start. But the main bulk of the event is students and businesses sit together, and as businesses do, where they go to networking events, include students into that conversation. So we've run it for a number of times. We've done 2 this year, and the sentiment from the students and the businesses has been excellent, and they really enjoy it. And students have come away with, and so many times, because you would have heard it as well, so many times students have said to me, "I didn't even think about working in that industry. Now I'm going to go away and look at it," and that's really what it's all about. And they get to speak to these businesses, pick their brains, ask them all sorts of details about the job and what they've got, and make those connections. So that, and a couple of them have actually lined up placements during the summer holidays, or even internships or apprenticeships after they finish. So that's just a whistle stop tour of that event. And really, in terms of planning, because a lot of people are thinking, where do I start? If you just contact businesses in your area and just networking event will be the same as what you already do, but instead we're going to have students there and give you a chance to speak to them. You'll be surprised at how many come back and go, "Can I bring someone else as well?" And that I got that so many times. The 2 that I've planned.
Yeah, absolutely. And some things is putting it out to parents and to the kind of stakeholders for your school. And yeah, you'll be very much surprised on who comes out of the woodwork and go, yeah, absolutely, I want to get involved. And they make the time to get involved. And I think sometimes you can think that you're imposing on these businesses, and they're very busy people, and they absolutely are. But they want to get involved. They want to give something back. And as Mo said there, give them something. So with the themes that we had for this, and what was the theme for this one, Mo?
It was retaining talent. So we sort of brainstormed ideas, and we retaining talent, especially retaining talent for businesses, but also retaining talent in Suffolk is a big issue in our area. And we wanted to sort of initiate the conversation, not give answers to businesses of how to retain talent. And it was actually a conversation starter. And now something we also did as part of that, we've got some students who did some research and wanted to present. So I've got a group of students that we do a club with at lunchtimes, and they I proposed to them. I said I would like you to do a presentation. I didn't tell them anything beyond that. And what they did was they did a research piece where they went and got 300 of our other students to fill out a survey on students' perspective of why they don't stay in the area, what would make them stay in the area, and what would also make them stay in businesses. So Gerard sort of talked about it last week, where a lot of businesses struggle to retain talent. It's a big problem for them. It's costly, and it helps answer their questions. So our students did a really excellent piece, and they presented, and it gave them a chance to develop those skills we were talking about earlier about confidence and public speaking. And again, it takes the pressure off again from teachers, because the students did the talk. But it was amazing. It was a really great conversation starter as well after they presented the research.
Yeah, and I think that's an important tip is making sure that the students are involved in the planning of these events and the carrying out of the events. So the students did a fantastic job in presenting to sort of 30, 40 business people that were there at the network event. It's a really scary task for them. But if we're talking about those skills that we're talking about at the top of the show, around kind of building resilience and building their character, it's absolutely things like that work. And also it takes some of the pressure off the teacher to kind of run the whole show and do that. Time is precious, isn't it? Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to attach to that, actually, we were talking about kind of deprivation, and one of the things that the government report said about was students from kind of deprived backgrounds may well be left behind. And one of the things that we introduced right at the start of this kind of journey, this project that we're on, is the business wardrobe. So I said earlier about kind of, if you're from a disadvantaged background, one of the barriers to getting a job, even going to interview, might be that you've got nothing to wear. So what we did was reach out to businesses and reach out to colleagues across the college for donations of things like suits, smart shoes, smart clothes, blazers and ties and things like that. And we now have a wardrobe in place where students can come along. They can borrow, or they can just take whatever outfits they need to then kind of be able to be in a comfortable position to to go to a job interview, to go to the world of work, if they've got a job and they need something but they can't afford it, or they might just have to wear it once for that one job interview, then they can come and borrow that. And that's been fundamental, and that they can do it. They don't have to tell anyone about it. They don't have to say it's borrowed. We had businesses in the local area that donated brand new stuff. So most of it doesn't even look as though it's kind of secondhand and used. And we've got a whole wardrobe of stuff now that they can come and borrow. And I think stuff like that is essential. Doing the presentations at the business breakfast, we wanted them to look the part. We wanted them to look as though they were in a business. So some of the students came and borrowed some of the clothing for that. So I think that's essential for making sure that everyone can participate in that.
Yeah, Chris, I just wanted to add a couple of bits from the research as well that the students have done. So, just again, if we're not doing a good enough job convincing you that this is something students need, the research they did, they asked 300 students, and just some of the key things. One of the questions they asked were, what are the top 3 things businesses could do better to support young people in understanding career opportunities? And the top 3 results were with 209, so about over 2/3 of the students surveyed said provide more work experience opportunities. Over half said opportunity for more hands-on projects, and then the last one was about transparent job application process. But there were other options. I won't go into detail, but the others got less than 100 votes. The top one, provide more work experience. Again, to the students' voice, they're saying this is what we want. We need more of this. And then also the follow-up question was, what can we as your college or your teachers do better? And again, the top result was provide more work experience by, the second pick was 100 picks away. So they really want work experience. They really want experience of the workplace. Now, that might mean just real life projects, or if your curriculum allows. I know in BTEC, Chris, in BTEC Business, we have a work experience unit that sort of lends itself well to that. But actually in other subjects where there might not be a unit or a theme or anything like that links to it, thinking about work experience, getting students that real life experience, and whether you can teach a lesson, one of your lessons, with a case study. Maybe a business comes in, or if you're in the sciences, maybe a pharmacy comes in and does a real life project. I don't know, but giving them that real life experience through that could be really, really useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important, that we're doing stuff like that to kind of encourage these students to get involved. Absolutely.
And Chris, the other thing I wanted to ask you about is something that you started. It's really your baby, which is our Model UN Club. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we introduced this, and I know a lot of schools across the country do this. So this is again about building character and building an idea of what exists around the world. So our Model UN Club that we introduced a few years ago now, for students across the college. And what we do with that is, the start of the year, the students are introduced to the Model UN, what it is, and they look at kind of the main objectives of the Model UN, so what they stand for and the sort of thing that they do. Students then have to choose a country. So they choose that country, and it might be a country that they're familiar with. So we have quite a lot of students that have joined us from overseas. So it might be that they know already a little about that country. But on the whole, most students kind of choose a country just because of their kind of political background, because of the interest and what they're doing there. We then look at the kind of the UN Charter, the UN structure, and we look at the UN objectives. And what the students have to do is they have to then choose 2 areas of debate to look at and to debate, and they have to look at it from their country's point of view. And having that kind of viewpoint from something that's completely different to their own culture, their own background, is really eye-opening for the students to do that. We then work with the students at lunchtimes and develop things like debating skills, public speaking skills, negotiation skills. So we had quite a funny, I recall a few months ago, quite a funny lunchtime session where we had our Saudi team, our Saudi Arabian team, were kind of negotiating. They were going around. They were trying to bribe other countries and persuade other countries to go from their point of view. So then they take the kind of Model UN objectives. So they have to come up with 2 questions. One of the questions that and it's quite deep, quite worldly kind of questions that they're looking at. So one of them was, should we provide more arms to the Ukraine? One of the questions was around whether developing countries should be subsidized for developing green energy and things like that to promote business. And then we link up each year. We've linked up with a different law firm. We then go into London and we have our conference in there just to give the students an experience of London, to give them an experience of a large firm in London. And these businesses, they treat us so well. They provide us with lunch, they provide us with facilities, they provide us with mentors. And it's just a case of contacting them and asking them to do that. And then the other thing we do is we go to Geneva once a year. So then we take them over to have a look at the UN buildings, to have a look at WIPO, at World Trade Organization, and things like that, so they can get a better understanding of what exists out there. And again, it's developing that aspiration, but it's developing public speaking skills, debating skills, and things like that. So that's been really successful for us. Yeah, one of the other things, Mo, that we've done is around the employability conference. You want to talk a little bit about that? I'm conscious we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. But,
Yeah,
what have we done there?
just before I talk about that, I just wanted to add that conference for the Model UN. The one every year we've done this. 2 years I've been involved, and a lot of students that I teach do Model UN, and you see them in the class, and you know their ability, you know how they get on, and some were really impressive in lessons and whatnot. But actually, when I saw them at the conference where they had to stand in front of all their peers and talk, it was one of the highlights of my teaching career, where I just saw those students with that sort of, when they first start the module and they're not very confident, they don't really want to get up and talk, it's very daunting, and actually by the end of it they can stand in front and hold themselves and sort of debate and some very controversial topics that actually even adults at UN struggle to debate, and it's a really worthwhile thing to do, and it's teamwork, it's confidence, it's speaking, it gets them to think about the world and how things go, and yeah, so it's a really, really useful thing for people to do, I think, and I would recommend.
Just one more bit on that, and that if people are interested in developing and introducing the Model UN, Google it. Model UN website's got so many resources and information and handouts, and it's pretty much ready to go. So you can go into the lunchtime sessions, and there's ready-made lessons for you, ready-made lunchtime sessions to do that. The big bit is kind of arranging your conference at the end of that. But again, you get help and support on that, so I'd recommend that to anyone.
Yeah, and Chris, I'm conscious of time. I think it's better if we save the conference for next week. But the one I do want to talk about is the interview practice that we do with our students. Now, if you're a business BTEC teacher, we have a unit where they do recruitment and selection, where as part of the pass criteria they have to do an interview. But actually, for anyone teaching any subject, we get students to do real life interview practice. And instead of us sitting there and doing this interview practice with them, what we do, and we've done one last week, and we've got another set that we're going to be doing next week. So 50 students did interview practice last week, another 50 are doing next week. And what we've done is we've contacted businesses in the area, and we've said, look, we'd like our students to get some real life experience of interviewing. Can you help? And what they do is, these businesses, they've sent us job descriptions of jobs that they've hired for in the past, sort of junior level, entry level jobs. And then they've actually, so on next week, I've got 8 members of staff from a business coming in to do a whole day of practice interviews. And as part of the process, students have written CVs, they've applied to the job, and then they're going to sit down and do a half an hour, 40-minute interview. And we could sit down and do these interviews. I mean, it wouldn't be that useful. We're actually applying for a real life job and then doing a mock interview on it. We find that students love it, and then the businesses also always compliment how the students have been. And so that's something to look into. Is there a potential in your area, maybe not in the subject or part of the curriculum, but actually a lunchtime thing where those students who really, especially maybe year 11s who might be thinking about going into doing some interviews, or your year 12s and 13s who will be applying for jobs and things like that, to give them that real life experience of what an interview might be. Because really, interview is one of those things you never get it right the first time, and the more practice you have, the sort of better that you get at it. So, yeah.
Right. Well, it kind of come to the end of the show there, but just kind of key takeaways of what we've spoken about today about extracurricular activities and enrichment and things like that. They're more than just giving students information about the world of work. They're about equality and equity, and ensuring that everyone's got fair opportunity to thrive and get out there and have aspirations. I think the important thing to say as well is it's never too early. So primary schools, secondary schools, and colleges and universities should all be trying to get involved with that. And we've done quite a lot of work with primary schools and secondary schools as well to do that, because it can't come too early. But ultimately, if we've got motivated students that know what they want to do and know what their options are, that's got to be a good thing in the classroom. And I think that's the ultimate thing. If nothing else convinces that we must be doing this as educators, that has got to be it. Mo, thanks so much for your time this afternoon, and for kind of sharing your ideas and what you've been doing as part of your role.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for your time. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Hopefully there's some practical advice. I don't know if there's any way, Chris, for them to ask us questions or follow up. I'm more than happy if anyone wants sort of practical advice and some support on how to get these things off the ground. More than happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. So you can join the show Thursdays, 6 o'clock. You can join there and join in the chat as part of that. So if you've got any questions, feel free to do that. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.